Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 19, where the Lions took on the Highlanders in a close-fought game that ended 23-22 to the Kiwis. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Right, guys, we're back again. It's episode 19. I'm here again with Dan. Hi, mate.
Hi, mate. How you doing? I apologise if I'm a bit croaky. I have a slight cold, verging on man flu, but I'm battling through.
You're so brave.
mate. The word hero is overused these days, but I'm willing to take that mantle.
Fair enough. So I'm here with the hero, Dan Wood. We've just witnessed the Lions' second defeat. It's obviously not what we want to see, but I guess you just have to keep reminding yourself that ultimately it's about the Test matches. And New Zealand, unlike past Lions tours, New Zealand have decided no, we're going to put our best up against you, rather than a bunch of kind of made up teams or weak sides, which is probably going to work out quite well in the long run, because it's giving us, the Lions a real sort of challenge in the build up to the Test matches. It's really going to get them Test match ready.
Was it New Zealand who decided the schedule? I don't know. Was it New Zealand? Was it the Lions?
I'm not really sure how it worked. I mean, if it was the Lions, great call. If it was New Zealand, thanks very much, I think. Because although, it's always nice to get a load of wins, if you win all your midweek games and get destroyed in all the Test matches, it's a pretty poor tour. Whereas if you have a whole series it's a bit like World Cups of days gone by, and particularly in New Zealand's case, often they would find themselves in very easy groups. They put 100 points on Japan or whatever it might be, and then suddenly they find themselves in real Test match knockout rugby, and that's where they would fall short because they hadn't had that high intensity kind of practice. So it's kind of similar to that. I quite like it. Yes, it's disappointing not to get a win, but I think it gives us an opportunity to really weed out the best 15, the best 23 come Test match time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to make of this tour, to be honest. Like, normally, I know the last tour to Australia at this point, I was so like everything was Lions. My life at the moment, I don't know. That match just didn't really. There seemed to be something missing, like some essence of the Lions missing for me in that match. I don't know what that is. I don't know the answer to that, but it just didn't seem quite right.
Well, I think there's probably quite a lot of instances in today's game, particularly with the changes that were made in the second half and certain decisions that were made throughout the game, that would suggest that Warren Gatland is still kind of running tests rather than just kind of saying go out there and show us what you can do. He's still trialing people. I actually quite like it. Yes, it's disappointing to lose. Yes, you'd like to think that with a 22-13 lead, a team of this caliber, and I say this caliber, like any of the sort of the combinations really are of a high enough caliber that you'd like to think that at 22-13 they can put the game to bed. But changes got made that probably wouldn't have been made if you were looking to simply get a win. I'm not sure you'd take off Rhys Webb and bring on Greg Laidlaw at the time that you did. That's no disrespect to Laidlaw, but I think Webb was really into the game and he was running the game his way. That's what had got them to that lead. So I think there was no need to take him off. But I think under different circumstances, he probably wouldn't have been taken off. But I think because it is still a testing phase, and maybe it's a case of saying, well, I've already made up my mind as far as the Nines are concerned, so let's not leave him out there any longer and risk any injuries. There's no need. It's a difficult one because it's difficult to know where you draw the line between the importance of getting a win and the importance of giving enough players enough game time to make the right call on the right test team.
Well, I think that's exactly it, isn't it, mate? I mean, we don't know what the camp's like, what the atmosphere in the camp is. Maybe maybe they don't need that morale booster from a win as much as we perhaps need as fans. Maybe it is so focused on winning the test, which great if it is. So without knowing that, it's hard to know the call. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, they could have won that match. They could have put that to bed. They made substitutions. I get why. I'm not at all being critical about it, because it's a Lions tour. You've got to play people. You've got to figure out what your best team is for the test. So realistically, that's not the test team. The test team will probably be very close to what Saturday's team is.
As you say, it wasn't a test for me, at least. It wasn't a test team by any stretch. I mean, we're going to come on to it at the end. We've obviously made a commitment to predict our test 23, which we will do as a segment at the end. But yeah, you're right. For me, that was a team that was all about giving people a sort of a not necessarily one last chance, because I think there will be other opportunities, but certainly as far as the first test is concerned, a sort of a one last chance to put their hands up. And I'm not convinced that anyone really changed my mind. I mean, there were some good performances from guys, but I'm just not sure if they were good enough in my mind to change where my head was before the game. But look, let's come on to that, and let's look at this game. And I think There were errors in this game. I mean, right off the bat, 15 missed tackles, 12 penalties conceded. They talk time and time again. They talk about keep the penalty count in single figures. Obviously, you can get away with higher penalty counts when they're in the opposition half. But if you start giving them away in your own half, it's points. And that's really what happened with the scoreline. We had 22-13 ahead. Comfortable lead. You'd like to put it to bed, but then you start giving away, soft penalties within kicking range. You're giving away 3 points a pop, and you only need to get 3 of those to get the scores back even again. And of course, that's what happened. Well, that isn't what happened, but soft penalties resulted in points, and ultimately they were able to come back.
Okay, so I'm taking it a step back here. You and me just watched the same game, the same streaming. Yet I didn't see those stats. And you have the stats to hand. Well, how are you getting the information more than I am? I like it. I'm just wondering how it's happening.
I don't know what to tell you, mate. They popped up on the screen.
You learned to read. Okay, yeah.
that must have been it. That must have been it.
But yeah, actually, to go back to your point, yeah, you're right. It wasn't like you do that against the All Blacks, no chance. 15 missed tackles against the All Blacks. That's probably 15 tries, to be honest. I mean, I'm being facetious, but the penalty count, as Warburton said in the interview, it has to be single figures, and it wasn't today. I just didn't, and like we were saying, that wasn't a test team, but these are still the best players in Britain and Ireland.
Yeah.
So every player is a good player, and they genuinely are. We're not struggling. We've got really good players on this Lions tour. So I'm disappointed we lost out. I don't think we should have, and we could have engineered it to win, but it does. I don't. To be honest, I'm a bit lost. There were a few things like that driving maul try that they scored. That was just sloppy. There's no way we should have let them score that. I don't have the answers to how we could stop it, but it just did seem quite weak defence.
Yeah, I mean, there was the defence was nowhere near the intensity of the defence that they put up against the Crusaders. Yes, it was a different side, but as you say, these are the best 42 players in the British Isles, and therefore, any combination of them should be able to stand up to any team. Let's look at the team. The front row: Sinclair, Best, and Marler. We talked about Best. I don't think anything has changed. I think, he's had a few opportunities. He's ruled himself out. Sinclair looked good. He was strong with ball in hand. He made some great runs. Defensively, he was strong. So, as an individual, I thought he had a great game. I thought Joe Marler had a good game.
Yeah, I agree. Sinclair's had a really good tour, actually. I will give a little soundbite as to my team later, but I've got him in the 23. I think he's definitely worked his way into it. I think he's had a really good tour. Marler, again, I thought was strong. Yeah, and I agree with Best, because before this tour, Best was my I at one point I even had Best as the Lions captain,
Yeah.
but he's not had a great tour.
Which, it's unfortunate for him, but I think it's okay. I think there are good enough options outside him. So I'm not too worried about him not being the man for the job, because I think there's plenty of backup. It's not like he's a Billy Vunipola that suddenly isn't firing. He was one of three that all were in with a shot. And as it happens, it's looking more likely to be the other two. So that, the front row wasn't too bad. Laws and Henderson in the second row. I thought it was really unfortunate that obviously Courtney Laws went off. He was obviously the line out leader. Yes, he was replaced by Alan Wynne, who can do that job as well. But it's all about continuity and you have a game plan. And yes, you need to be able to react to how things change. But it's always gonna kind of mix things up a little bit when you lose key players. And I think for this team on this day, I think he was one of those. And unfortunately, he obviously went off, didn't come back on. We don't know the extent of the injury. But I think perhaps he's probably the one that was always looking like he might be unlucky to just miss out on a test spot. Certainly the first test, at least.
He had to have an epic game today, I think, and through no fault of his own, really. He hasn't had that opportunity. I'm with you. I'd be surprised if he's involved in the test. Henderson as well. I don't think Henderson actually had a bad game, but
I think he had a very good game, to be honest. I think I'm not sure he did enough to break his way into the test side as of yet, but I think compared to his opener against the did he play against the Blues? I think he didn't he?
No, he played against the Provincial Barbarians.
Provincials, right? Yeah. And he wasn't great then. He just didn't really seem to be firing. But I thought today he looked really strong. He made some really strong tackles. He was involved in a number of the big turnovers. And he did a great job. It's at the moment it's not looking like there are too many weaknesses on the day. I mean, moving into the back row, Haskell, captain Sam Warburton was obviously back, and CJ Stander.
Stander's an outstanding player, to be honest. I mean, he's going to play well. Warburton, I thought he did quite well. I think he's starting the test. I know there's lots of chats for that. I still can't see a scenario where he's not starting that test match. Haskell, and this sounds harsh, but he's not the player he was last year. I really, really like Haskell, and I think he adds a lot to the tour, to the game. But there's so many good back row, and he needed to be outstanding, and he wasn't.
Well, I mean, so my view on Haskell's slightly different. So, I mean, first up, more reading that I did here. Haskell was our lead tackle count. He made 10 tackles himself, so he led the tackle count for the Lions. I think that with all of it used to be that the back row, they were the ball carriers. And that's obviously changed because the second row are both ball carriers now. You've got your props are ball carriers. You've got CJ Stander carrying, whenever he can, doing brilliantly. I think that Haskell's fallen not into the trap, but I think his role has evolved. And I think he's become more of a, there's always those players that you don't really see, like they work hard, but you don't always see it on the screen or when you're there. And I think he's become one of those guys that sort of gets in there and gets mucky and does the dirty work. I think he worked hard, and I think he's unfortunate to just, it's hard to shine when that's your role. And I think stats like being the lead, holding the lead tackle count and stuff, it just goes to show that he was doing the hard work. I'm trying to think of errors that he made, and to be honest, I can think of one early on in the first half where he went to pick and go and he fumbled it. You don't want to be seeing things like that, but he certainly wasn't the only person to make errors. It's a difficult one. I think you're right. I mean, I think with the quality that we have in the back row, I think he misses out. But I don't think he's done himself a disservice. I think he performed all right. But yeah, possibly a hiding to nothing because I think there are better options in the back row. But I guess we see how things progress.
Well, you've got a Brian, you've got Money, you've just got such a good back row. I mean, it's really hard for him to sort of fight in, and if you're going to sort of make my points look stupid by using stats, and I don't know how I'm going to win these arguments, but It's it's just such a strong back row contingent that he probably hasn't done enough for me, which is a shame because I really like him. I really rate him as well. I think he's massively underrated. I think he's a lot better player than people give him credit for, because a lot of that might be because people see the brand that is James Haskell rather than sort of seeing the player. The others stood up, but I don't think Haskell will be there. But if we move then, so we've got Webb and Bigger. Both had good games. I actually thought Bigger had a really good game.
He did. He's another one who
it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it doesn't matter how good a game he has. He's just not really got a chance. Unless there's an injury, and that he needs to keep firing because he needs to be ready in case of something like that. But I think when you've got a player like Farrell, who's the best 10 and 12 the Lions have got, and then you've got Sexton, who's a world-class 10. You kind of haven't got a room for a Dan Bigger. But you're right. I think today, looking at today's game, I thought he had a great game. He was very strong in defence, which is good. And as we said, that's one of the areas that I think they really lacked in today. Like compared with the game against the Crusaders, where the defence shut the Crusaders down, I felt like the defence today, wasn't as strong. Credit to the Highlanders. They put the Lions under an awful lot of pressure. The aerial ball in particular, they used, very well. And the Lions struggled. I mean, we'll move to the back three quickly just because we're talking about the aerial ball. I thought all three of the back three struggled with the aerial ball. We must have, I haven't got a stat for this one. You'll be pleased to hear. But it must have been 80, 90% of the aerial balls we lost out. But it felt like, every time the ball went up in the air, anything 50-50, we were losing. And it felt by the end like, we were going to lose it as well. I didn't have that confidence in our back three to hold on to the ball in those situations. And I just felt like that was a huge advantage to the Highlanders because it reached a point where they kind of just knew we stick a good aerial ball up, it's ours again. Or if it's not, they'll make an error. I think Payne started reasonably well at the back. But I'm not sure he did enough to put down a marker as a test 15. Seymour, I think, made a lot of errors. Jack Noel, we love Jack Noel. We'd love to see him do well for the Lions, but he again, I don't know. It
hasn't worked for him, has it? Which is such a shame because he was so epic for Exeter at the end of the season and for England. Like he's a good enough player. He's not out of his depth. But he seems to be out of his depth, if that makes sense.
I think maybe he is a consummate team player. Exeter is one of those sides that, they've kind of, for a long time, they were the underdogs. They didn't have the superstars with the individual brilliance. So they very much had to gel as a 15, as a 23. And I think that, within that setup, he shone. I think with England, that's where he does well. Because I think Eddie Jones has brought the England team together in such a way that they are very much a 23, and so I think he shines for England. I think in this Lions setup, and particularly while we're still in these kind of early-ish stages where Test places are still up for grabs, I feel like an awful lot of players are still. There's more of a team spirit thing going on, but I feel like there are still players trying to show themselves up, and maybe he's doing the same thing because they all want to get in that Test side, and that's not where his strengths lie. So you kind of saw him today. He was kind of having a go at everything, but not quite mastering anything, which sounds harsh, but that's how it looked to me. That's how it felt to me. And I think, sadly, he's probably played himself out of any Test opportunity. But as we keep saying, time will tell. Because to be honest, Seymour is in the same boat. Payne is in the same boat. George North didn't have the best of games against the Crusaders. So it's difficult. Wing is still very much up in the air, I think, for Test sides. And I think that's one of those areas where the first Test is not going to define the Test matches. I think any player that thinks that they're out of the running is mistaken. There's still an awful lot to play for. They may have played themselves out of a chance to play in the first test, but the first test is followed by another midweek game, which is followed by 2 more tests, and obviously the Maori All Blacks on Saturday is sort of an unofficial 4th test. So there are still opportunities, I think, to shine. I don't think anyone should be giving up just yet. I think come test number 2, that may be the time where players start to think, right, well, that's my tour over. But we're not there yet. So I think it's important that these guys continue, when they're given the opportunity, continue to try and put their hands up.
Just when you said tour over there, just to digress, such a shame about Stuart Hogg. Because obviously, for those who don't know, I'm sure everyone does by now, but for those who don't know, Stuart Hogg's tour is obviously over because of the injury. He can't take any further part. Do we know if they're bringing in a replacement? I haven't heard anything.
So I believe they're not bringing in a replacement because I think they feel like they have enough cover, which is probably true. So as far as I understand it, at the moment, the decision is not to bring in a replacement. I think Stuart's staying out there as well. I think he's going to stick with the team. But yeah, the last I heard that it's a cheek. I think it's a cheek injury, but it's the eye socket, and I think he's having problems with his vision. So hopefully nothing too serious, nothing that can't get back to 100%. But clearly not clearly too serious to continue on the tour, and obviously such a shame that it came off a red arm, and you can't even say it was an opposition clash. It was friendly fire.
It was. I think Conor Murray's still bitter about the Scots turning over the Irish in the Six Nations. That's my theory.
Well, it's possible. It's quite possible. but yeah. So sadly, yeah, as you say, he is no more, and it does leave question marks, because the only other out and out fullback is, of course, Lee Halfpenny, who there were a lot of question marks over him, over his selection. Although he did have a great game when he played. Against the Blues, even though they lost. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go with that. I have a plan for myself, and we'll talk about that later. But I think that they will be leaving it as is, rather than bringing anybody new out onto the scene. A couple of other points from this game. So one of the other changes, Dan Cole, obviously trying to put his hand up to be one of the props considered. He seemed to me to do an awful lot of talking. I don't want to say it was all talk and no action, but there was every time we seemed to concede a penalty, he seemed to be screaming at the referee or the referee's assistant, rather than just getting his head down and trying to prevent it, which is never great to see.
I think the rugby term is all fart and no poo.
Is that right? Well, there you go. So you heard it here first from was it the hero Dan Wood?
It's the hero Dan Wood, yeah.
Right. All fart and no poo for Dan Cole. So I think his spot might be in jeopardy if in fact he was in with a shout of a Test shirt. The other thing that I heard at the end of the game that was interesting was, obviously Farrell came on. We can never say enough about Farrell, but he came on his first. Before any action whatsoever, the first thing he had to do when he walked on the pitch was a kick, one that you would expect him to put over, one that, in hindsight, would have won us the game. And the question is, Greg Laidlaw had been on the pitch for a good sort of 10, 15 minutes at this stage. We know that he's a good kicker. Is there an argument to say that because he'd been on the pitch and his nerves were settled, he would have been a better shout? I know it's easy in hindsight to say that, because you look at Owen Farrell and you think, well, you just put him on because he doesn't miss. So yeah, try not to use hindsight, and is there an argument to say that that's the sensible thing, rather than literally making the first thing the guy does when he walks on the pitch?
Of course there is, but the problem is what no one's taken into account. If that's a Test match, Farrell nails it. Like I think it was Stuart Barnes who didn't seem to be drunk this morning, which was a nice change. But I think it was him who mentioned he's missed 3 fairly easy kicks like each match. Come a Test match, he will nail them all. Owen Farrell was literally sort of bred 5 floors below Twickenham, and he is a machine. He will not miss them come Test matches. Am I being biased? Yeah, to an extent, of course I am. But I genuinely believe that. I genuinely believe that that's a Test match, he gets that kick. I actually think Farrell's one of those who's calmer. The sort of more high pressure the situation, the calmer he is.
We'll see. Obviously, I don't think there's any danger of him missing out, and I think he will certainly be the kicker. And of course, come Test match, he's not going to be coming on with 10 minutes to go. He's going to be there at the start.
Is he the kicker, or is Halfpenny the kicker if Halfpenny starts?
I think Farrell.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because Halfpenny, despite like what we've said over the last few months or whatever about we're not sure he's earned his place on this tour, although having been on the tour, he seems to have. And I think his kicking has not really faltered. I mean, he is a fantastic kicker.
He is, but he's not in the Test 23, so he won't be there. Not? He won't be there to challenge Farrell.
So you and me have different Test 23s, clearly.
Excellent. Well, we'll talk about that shortly, because just before we move on to that, just a word on the centres, Henshaw and Joseph. It was a mixed bag. I mean, Henshaw, first of all, I thought had a great game.
Workhorse, absolute workhorse.
Yeah, put in some big tackles, strong in defence, strong in attack-ish. But yeah, worked really, really hard. I don't know if he's put up his hand. I think there's too many other options. And with the whole Farrell Sexton dilemma, I think perhaps there isn't space for him, at least for the first test. Joseph, on the other hand, had an interesting one, because certainly wasn't his best game. There were errors. There were 2 or 3. Officially, they're called missed tackles, but really he just got bounced massively in the tackle. And yet, on top of that, there was some really nice, smart play from him as well. You know, he's a guy that does have that word that you love, the X factor, and he has the creativity to kind of compete with the All Blacks. But again, it was something Fitzpatrick said after the game. You know, the Lions, do they need to match the All Blacks' creativity? Or is it more important that they play their game, that they play that very strong defence, and that they kind of prevent the All Blacks from being able to use that creativity rather than trying to compete with it?
I don't think you need to necessarily go and compete against it. I don't think it's about like trying to match them. I think it's about, do you want creativity? Yes, you do. For me, he's probably made one too many mistakes, but you need. I don't think you can pick a team based upon, oh, look how good the All Blacks are. Let's see if we can get a slightly lesser version of that team. Of course, we play our own game, but then you still need to score points. And to score points, it helps if you've got a creative player like a Joseph, who does have something that others don't have. I'm not going to say it, but there's just one too many mistakes, and that's a shame. If he hadn't made any mistakes today, I think he was a real option for a test spot. I don't think he's a test starter now. I think Jonathan Davies, we'll need to find out what's going on with Jonathan Davies, but I think he'll start on Saturday, and assuming he has a solid game, I'm pretty sure, well, certainly in my team, he's starting.
Well, that's probably a good place to kind of move on to our test team selections. So it's really just to round up today's game. Mixed bag, a lot of errors, too many penalties conceded, too many missed tackles, and the Lions lost 22-23, which isn't what we want to see. But perhaps more questions answered for Warren Gatland in terms of selecting his test side. But it's not Warren selecting it today. It's the England Rugby pod. So let's have a look and see what we're going to go for. Let's go with the starting 15, and then we'll add in the finishers. We'll stick with Eddie's name for them. We'll finish with the finishers. So 1, 2, and 3. Who have you got?
I've gone Furlong, George, Mako.
Okay, so I've gone Furlong and Mako as 1 and 3. I'm actually going Owens to start at 2. Obviously, I'd like to see Jamie George there, but I just think if you're going to pick one of them as the finisher, it's going to be George. So yeah, Furlong, Owens, Mako. You're going Furlong, George, Mako.
So I think you're right. I think that's what. So I've picked what I would pick rather than what I think Gatland will pick.
Mine's a combination of the two. I think. I think I would pick Owens. I think I would pick Owens to start, and just not be afraid to. There's no rule that says you have to make your changes at 60 minutes. I think just depending on how things are going, make a decision about when the right time to bring Jamie George on is. And there's no reason why the finisher can't finish the majority, if that's, which is a bit like what they do with England. Often Dylan Hartley gets 30 minutes and then Jamie George comes on.
Yeah.
But okay, so moving into the row, I've gone to Toe-Jane Cruz.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, and Alan Wynne as the backup?
I've got him on the bench, yeah.
Yeah. So Toe-Jane Cruz, I know it's not what everyone has selected, and Alan Wynne gets the shout from a lot of the pundits, but I just feel like Toe-Jane Cruz work well together, and they just offer something. They just offer something more. Toe-Jane we know is a sort of a second row / back row player, so he offers a little extra in terms of trying to turn the ball over, the breakdown, and Cruz is the line out caller, I think, even when Alan Wynne is on the pitch. So
yeah, I think Cruz is the name that's definitely on the team sheet, and then it's between the Toe-Jane and Alan Wynne for the other one. And yeah, I'm with you. I just think a Toe-Jane offers a little bit more all round. And the guy is just a ball of energy, isn't he? So yeah, I've gone that as well. So back row, I've gone Stander, Warburton, Faletau.
Okay, I've gone Stander, O'Brien, Faletau. Slightly controversial. Tour captain Sam Warburton doesn't make my 23.
Well, okay. So I that won't happen if I'm like thinking about it from a sort of practical point of view, but from a performance point of view, from what's happened on the tour, I understand why you've done that. But I would be amazed if Warburton doesn't start the test, assuming he's fit.
I think you have to say, look, are we trying to win the test matches, or are we trying to play the players that are supposed to play? And for me, the simple fact is that with so many back row players, you've got to pick the in-form ones. And O'Brien was so strong in his last game. Stander shown today that he has to be on that field. And we've already said Faletau is the only guy that's going to be playing 8 in the test matches. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, as you say. But I equally, I get what you're saying. He's the tour captain and a lot of faith has been put in him. But you've got to play the guys that are going to win the games, not the ones that, it seems the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think we're probably not giving Warburton enough credit here. So from performance, I actually agree with your selection, Stander, O'Brien, Faletau. But I think Warburton is still a brilliant player, does still offer a lot. And I think come a test match, he will be fighting. I mean, it's a tough one with that. The reason I've gone Warburton is I can't see a scenario. I know there was a bit in the press where Warburton said this week he's not guaranteed a starting spot. I must admit, I can't see that scenario.
Fair enough. Well, we'll obviously see what happens. This is just a prediction at the moment. So moving into the 9-10 channel, we'll go 9-10-12 because I am including Sexton. I'm going Murray, Sexton, Farrell as the 9-10-12.
I'm going Murray, Farrell, Teo. And I'm a little bit annoyed with myself here because I think I prefer the way yours looks. But I just don't think Sexton and Farrell have played enough together. I think it's going to be, as you alluded to earlier, like, do we match them creativity? I think we will play our own game. I think, and when we're saying we, as you mentioned to me earlier, why was Fitzpatrick referring to the Lions as we?
Well, I guess he's a Lions employee, isn't he? He's been hired to go on the tour as a pundit for the Lions. So I'm guessing that's
dollar talks.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
Exactly.
Fair enough. But yeah, sorry, I digress there. So I really like the look of Sexton and Farrell both playing. I just not convinced there's enough time for that. Hence why I've gone Murray, Farrell, Teo.
No, I mean it's an interesting one because I guess the thing is you have Murray, Sexton. They're a natural pairing at 9-10, and actually because I've gone Teo, not Davies at 13. You've then got Farrell, Teo, so it almost becomes like a Farrell, Teo 10-12.
I really like the sound of that.
But you've got Murray, so it's Murray, Sexton are a natural pairing. Then you've got Farrell, Teo as a natural pairing. So between the four of them, there's a lot that works. I've gone for George North on the wing.
So, just before we do that, I've gone Davies as 13. So I've gone Farrell, Tio, Davies in midfield.
Yeah. No, I know if I was putting Farrell at 10, I think I would have the same.
Yeah.
Tia Davies 12, 13, but yeah, because I'm including Sexton, it's the other way around. But then yeah, my wings, Williams and North. It's not that they have made that shirt their own, without question. But I feel like wing is one of those positions that is massively open, and I've gone Watson at the back. So Watson was my only nailed on sort of back three. But because I've got him at 15, it means that the wingers are the ones where there are still opportunities. And it's one of the reasons why, even though I don't think it's going to happen, your Knowles, your Dailies, have still got a shout if they get another chance to play, which I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I think time's probably running out for them because obviously it's for marriage. I've actually gone my back three. I've gone North, Watson and Watson wing and Halfpenny as fullback. Now, I've been quite harsh on Halfpenny over the last few weeks. The reason I've gone with him is, yes, based on his last performance, but just that sort of solidity at the back. I think Halfpenny is a lion. I think he does step up for these games. And I just feel more comfortable, but I can't leave Watson out. I actually haven't got Williams in my 23.
Okay. I mean, so we're looking at the subs. I'll go through all of mine and then you do all of yours. But I've gone Sinclair, George, Marler as my front row replacements. I've then got Alan Wynne as my second row replacement, and then I've got Omani as my back row replacement. I guess I'm torn between whether I have an extra back row replacement, which I don't have at the moment, and it almost feels wrong. I've got Webb, obviously. You need a replacement in the scrum half, but you don't need a fly half replacement because of the options that are already on the field. And I've actually gone for two centres, which is a bit weird. It didn't feel right doing it, but so possibly one of those gets swapped out for another back row player, and maybe that's where Warburton gets in. Although maybe he doesn't want to be. Maybe you don't want to have him on the bench. I'm not sure. But I've gone Davies and I've gone Joseph, which is a bit of an outside bet, but it's more. It's because of that creativity and it's because of that X factor. It gives the option to say that's what we need right now, which I don't think you have in anyone else.
Our benches are pretty similar, other than the fact that some of my bench have got starting. So I've gone the Sinclair, Owens and Marler because I've got George starting ahead of Owens. So that Alan Wynne Jones second row. I've gone O'Brien on the bench because I've got Warburton starting. And I haven't gone for another back row because Atoje, in my mind, can step in if needs be. And then I've gone Webb, obviously. And then because I haven't played them, I've gone Sexton and also JJ for the exact reason you said.
So it's pretty much exactly the same 23, barring Warburton.
Yeah. And did you have Halfpenny?
No.
And but I didn't have Williams either.
True. So Halfpenny and Williams are swapped on our two sides.
Yeah.
And then Warburton and someone else. Don't know who. But there it is. That is our predictions. It's not the Rugby Pod prediction. It's Andy's prediction and it's the Hero Dan's prediction. So we will see how.
Can we stick with this? Can we stick with this?
Yeah, I think maybe it's just this one episode. But
I was going to say I'm not convinced you're going to keep calling me that.
No, I'm not sure that I will either. But stranger things may have happened. Stranger things may have happened. So there it is, guys. That is our predictions for the first test, which is still a way off. It's obviously kind of the unofficial test on Saturday, which could change things. But we've gone big and we've gone early, and we'll see how close we come. The rule is we're not allowed to change our test team following next Saturday's game unless there's an injury. Okay, so if there are any injuries to our selection, we will be allowed to make replacements. Otherwise, we have to stick with what we've gone for now and see how close we come on the 24th of June, I think it might be, the first test.
It is the 24th. I didn't realise we weren't allowed to change, but fair enough. Yeah, no. I think that's probably a good rule.
We'll do it. We'll make changes after the first test. Obviously, if we've got it wrong, but also if we think there's any changes that need to be made, which will be for the final two tests. But yeah, there it is. Thanks for listening once again. As always, please review us, rate us, go on iTunes. 5 stars means you loved it. It also means you hated it. So, any way you feel about it, just give us 5 stars and let us know what you think. And if you've got any questions, social media is at England Rugby Pod, or you can go to the website www.englandrugbypod.com. And that is it for me. Episode 19 done.
That's it from me as well. Thanks for listening, guys.
Cheers, guys. Take care.